Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today this is going to be a full spoiler review for Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 2, Chapter 10, called The Passenger. So full spoilers. If you have not seen the episode already, then don't watch this. Go watch the episode, and then come back, and I'm just gonna talk about it. It's less of a review, more of a rambling, like, here's what I thought, I guess. There's no score at the end. Do you need a score at the end to call it a review? I don't know. Anyways, so again, full spoilers. Here's your chance to leave. Okay, get out of here. So, the first thing I want to say right now is that this episode is not as epic or like mind-blowing as the first episode was. There's not like, there's not like this big cameo reveal, stuff like that, right? There's not even there are some action sequences, but it's not like as giant as the Crate Dragon and having two Mandalorian looking people flying around on jetpacks around the dragon. It's not as big of an action set piece, but it's still a pretty good one with some spiders involved. Overall, I would say this is still a pretty decent episode. In fact, I think it's still probably better than episodes 4 and 5, and maybe even episode 6 of the first season. So considering, I'd be like, this is still a pretty solid episode. But of course, it is what some people would call filler. I think that's going to be a term that's thrown around a lot. Just like with the first season, this is going to be like, it's going to happen with this season. There's going to be episodes where they're not addressing Moff Gideon. They're not addressing the overall mystery of the child and what's happening. They're still not getting back to that. So there's going to be people who call this filler, right? My one thing about that, and I understand the whole idea of like, we're kind of getting really impatient and kind of wanting them to get back to the main story. I get that. But at the same time, this is the journey. This is a weekly show, and there's going to be multiple seasons. We already know season 3 is being like written right now, and we already know season 4 is something that at the very least Giancarlo Esposito has hinted at season 4. So this is a weekly show. It's going to happen over time. This is the journey. This is not like Game of Thrones, where almost every episode of Game of Thrones was heavily plot relevant. The only reason they were able to do that was because they had these very large books to base the show off of within 10 episodes. Whereas here, this is a weekly adventure show. Okay, so I understand some people are going to be like, man, it's just another filler episode. And I get that, but this is what the show is. So if I guess all I'm trying to say is that if your complaint is that, if every other episode you're going to be like, it's another filler episode, and that's like your main complaint, I think you need to start reconsidering what you expect from this show. Because that's not what this show is. This show is a weekly adventure show that every once in a while will dip back into the main core story. But overall, it is about a Mandalorian going on weekly adventures to different planets and different creatures. I mean, isn't that what you would want anyways? To live in the Star Wars universe and like, this is what it looks like to live in this world. And I think this episode did a really good job of it, So anyways, it starts off with these I don't know if these were other bounty hunters necessarily, or if they were just trying to rob him. It was kind of unclear, because when these guys, they set up this trap to trip up his speeder. This is still on Tatooine. The first thing one of them says is, get the child. So I was like, oh, they're bounty hunters. But then the last guy, he has a weapon at the child, but instead he's like, no, I'll take the jetpack. So I'm like, are they just thieves? It was kind of unclear. And of course, the one thing that I think some people are going to be disappointed by again is that Boba Fett does not show up here. So I know that was like the big tease at the end of last episode. Boba Fett is going to show up eventually later on in the season. I'm very confident in that. I don't know anything, but I'm just saying that I very much expect that to happen. But he didn't show up here. He'll probably show up later down the road. He's still looking for more Mandalorians. So I have to imagine that at some point Boba Fett's going to get involved, especially because he still has his armor by the end of this episode. He still has the Boba Fett armor, so it's gonna be a thing that happens at some point. That was the setup for it to happen later. But basically, he goes back into town. He talks to I forget her character name, but the lady who helps him in Tatooine. Basically, he goes there and she's like, yeah, I know some guy, or I know someone who knows where Mandalorians are. And she's playing sabacc with this giant ant, which I believe we've seen that species before. I think in A New Hope, I think we've seen a giant ant species, I believe. That might be in the original cantina, that ant species. That might be the same ant, I guess, right? Because that would be the same. That is the cantina, right? So that might be the same ant. Anyways, basically she just says like, okay, here's this frog lady. She's trying to get her eggs back to this planet where her husband and her can just live together on this planet. And they're like really desperate to have like this last line of their kids, right? And that's basically the job. And on that planet where they're trying to head, there's supposedly gonna be some Mandalorians. So they get on there, and there's a lot of great Baby Yoda sequences here where he's trying to eat these eggs the whole episode. And that's definitely where, because I've made a video where I saw the Funko Pop with Baby Yoda and the egg canister, and everyone's like, what's this big mystery gonna be around it? But no, he just wants to eat them. That's all it is. But it's pretty funny. There's a lot of comical moments here with the child in this episode. But anyways, they're flying on their way. They can't use hyperspace, so they're flying manually, right? Just at normal, what they call it, sublight speeds. I think that's what they call it. Just normal. They're flying normally. And they get stopped by Dave Filoni, and I don't know who the other X-Wing pilot was. They get stopped by 2 X-Wings. I don't know who the other guy was. I'm sure it's supposed to be somebody. It's just another guy, but it's Dave Filoni and another pilot. They get stopped by then. It's a pretty funny exchange. It kind of seems like it was kind of like the cops are just kind of hassling this driver, because he's like, oh, do you have your beacon on? He's like, I don't have a beacon. Like, everyone's supposed to have a beacon. Like they're just kind of hassling him. But then of course I had completely not even thought about the fact that because the Mandalorian in the first season had helped escape the prisoners in episode 6. I completely didn't realize, like, oh, that's right, the Razor Crest would be wanted now by the New Republic because they broke into that New Republic jail thing, whatever that was. And they bring that up, and the second they bring that up, of course, he tries to get out of there, and they go on this ice planet that we've seen in the trailers, which the ice planet, everyone was very convinced that it was going to be Ilum. Everyone wanted it to be Ilum so bad. And that's another thing I think we all need to definitely brace ourselves for, is that, because look, Star Wars fans, we all do this to ourselves. We definitely do. I do it. A lot of other people do it. We all do it to ourselves. We see things in trailers and we are so convinced that, like, oh, this kind of resembles this, it must be a thing, and like we put our hearts into it. That like this has to be Ilum, or so and so has to be Sabine, so all that stuff, right? But of course it's not Ilum. It's just an unnamed, I believe it's unnamed, an unnamed ice planet, where they're stranded now because they kind of had a crash landing and there's this giant hole in the side of the ship. So anyways, just that's another thing I think, just along with what we think this show is going to be, filler episodes and all that, like I think we need to rethink what the show is supposed to be, like what it's trying to be. And we also need to rethink this whole thing that we do to ourselves. We do it with movies too, like, this is Ilum, this has to be this because I saw it in the trailer and I thought it was this and I had all these theories. It's like, you gotta let go of a lot of things here, because that was not Ilum. It's just a ice planet that they crash on. That's all it was. So we do it to ourselves. But anyways, they crash there. They're trying to make all these repairs, and this is of course when Baby Yoda starts trying to eat the eggs. And the first time Baby Yoda ate one of the eggs, I was genuinely shocked, because they kind of went on this whole thing the scene before about, like, these are my children, it's the last of my line, and all this stuff, right? And I was like, okay. And then he eats one. I was like, oh my god. Baby Yoda, you just ate one of her like last kids, basically, right? Like, or was going to be a kid. So I was like, Jesus. But I guess it makes sense, because we've seen him eat frogs, so him wanting to eat frog species eggs, that makes sense, right? Quick thing, I know it's like a fantasy Star Wars thing, so it's just the way it works, but like, there's alien frog species who are like sentient and capable of speech and all this stuff, but then there's also smaller, more animalistic frogs that Baby Yoda ate in the first season. It's just kind of whatever, it's a fantasy, it doesn't need to make sense. Anyways, so they're stranded on this ship. The frog lady goes and finds like a hot what is it called? It's a hot bath. I know that it's like those are naturally occurring things. What am I thinking of? Like a hot spring bath, like underwater, or I mean underground, like it's just heated by the the core of the earth, I guess, whatever you want to call it. Anyways, so they go there, and then you start seeing all these little objects, and Baby Yoda's walking around and he eats one, and the second he opened one up, these little objects that you see, I was like, oh, those are eggs. And of course they all start moving and all the spiders come out, and I'm not entirely sure if these are supposed to be the exact same species of spiders that we see in Rebels, because those are like, I think those were specific to that one planet that the Bendu was on, but they definitely have a lot of similarities to those spiders. They're gray and they have like a big dome top piece that's like kind of like an octopus looking dome thing. So it might have been the same type of spider, which is pretty cool to see live action, I guess, if that is the same type of spider. But it was definitely creepy. Definitely had I know, especially those who are like very like spider creeped out, because that's like a big phobia is the spiders, right? So there's a lot of scenes in here that I definitely think is gonna kind of trigger a lot of that stuff in people, where it's like, oh shit, there's spiders everywhere. So it was a pretty cool sequence of just trying to run away from all these little baby spiders, and then the giant spider, and he plants these bombs, and there's a lot of cool action set pieces here. Again, not as cool as the Crate Dragon, but pretty awesome stuff, I'd say. Especially like he does this one scene with the flamethrower, and he like charges it up, and anyways, it's pretty cool. And of course they're about to get away, and then the big spider shows up again, and then they get saved by someone off screen. Like a bunch of lasers start shooting the giant spider that's attacking them, and it turns out to be the X-Wing pilots. I was so sure it was like, oh, it's gonna be a Mandalorian, or it's gonna be, I don't know, Boba Fett somehow followed them and is trying to get his armor back, so he shows up. I don't know, but it's just the X-Wing pilots again, and they save him. And they kind of like make this deal, because like, okay, well, you did break into our jail place, but you did also capture those other 3 criminals, the people from episode 6. So they just kind of let him off with a warning, really, just to fix his beacon or whatever. And so he repairs his ship, and the funny thing is they're all in the cockpit, and so the door is closed for the cockpit, but the rest of the ship in the back is completely open to the vacuum of space, and they basically just drive out of there with that, and that's how the episode ends. The Razor Crest is horribly damaged. There's probably gonna have to be another sequence of them trying to fix it in the next episode, but that's okay, because there were like a bunch of spider webs and all kinds of craziness going on in the back, so they needed to let all of that out into the vacuum of space anyways. So I imagine at the very least it'll be cleaned out back there. Anyways, yeah, this episode had a lot of great stuff in it, a lot of great little moments. I know people are going to call it filler, but I think that's okay, because I think that's what this show is supposed to be. And I said this on Twitter a little while ago, but like, if they focused just on the main plot, this whole show, like each season, would be whittled down to like maybe 2 hours, if that, because think about season 1. You could take the first, like, you could take episode 1, episode 3, and then the last 2 episodes, and that would be like your whole story. You know, and it's like you're missing a lot of great Mandalorian content. So I don't think that's what the show's supposed to be. There really is a case of where like this is not a movie. You know, this is not like all right, let's focus solely on the main thing. Let's run away from Moff Gideon. Let's figure out Baby Yoda. It's like, no, we're trying to survive here and get day to day, and he's trying to find Mandalorians, and it's, you know, it's an adventure. That's what the show is. The show is the adventure part, not the end goal, right? And, you know, there's some saying that goes along with that. But any case, I really liked this episode. I did. I've already seen a couple people on Twitter kind of complaining about it, but like, again, I think it was clear to me that that Boba Fett thing was a setup for later. To me, the way that they ended it definitely didn't feel like, oh, he's gonna confront him next episode. It didn't seem like that. And I am definitely okay with them not going back to Moff Gideon and the main plot, because that definitely is back end of the season stuff. I will say though, however, because I made that other video a couple days, or one day ago, yesterday, I don't know, a couple days ago. IMDb had all of this information about, like, you know, they had images and they had casting suggesting that this episode was going to be the one with the ferry planet, where they're on the boats and they're trying to ferry this cargo, and you had that thing on Twitter. So that did not turn out to be true for this episode. However, with the frog lady and her eggs trying to get to that planet, that definitely, if you look at the trailer again, that definitely looks like what's going to be happening in the next episode, because we do see her and her egg canister on that planet, on the water planet. So it definitely seems like that this is going to be a direct continuation next time. So that is the one thing. That's the good thing, is that it definitely feels like the whole Sasha Banks mysterious character, who, again, because we all thought it was going to be Ilum, so Sasha Banks as well. There's a lot of people out there who are like, it's Sabine, it's going to be Sabine. Do not get your heart broken when it turns out to not be Sabine, when it turns out to just be a bounty hunter or an assassin or something. Because it's just, we have to learn these lessons. If we don't learn these lessons, then we're always going to be disappointed. Just because you see something in a trailer and you come up with a theory and you saw someone else make a YouTube video out of it, that doesn't mean you should go into the episode with like, it better be this. I've been, you know, you get your heart set on something. It's like, you have to let go of theories. They're fun to make, but like, if you know, this whole Ilum thing, I have to imagine that there's going to be people out there right now going like, I can't believe it wasn't Ilum. They wasted an opportunity to go to Ilum. And it's like, that was never the plan. That was just a fan thing that we all made up. So anyways, this episode was fun. It sets up things probably for the next episode, where they're going on the boat ride and you know, they're continuing the whole egg canister thing. And yeah, I'm fine with this show just being a weekly adventure. There's a lot of cool stuff in this episode. Just because it didn't go back to the main plot, that doesn't really mean this is like a lesser episode. I understand some people are gonna want to binge the whole show or rewatch this and skip all these other episodes, but I personally feel like you would be missing out on the adventure part. I don't even remember the saying. Something about the destination, the journey, something. Someone out there will fill in what the phrase is. But in any case, I had fun with this episode, especially when they're running away from the spiders, and there's a lot of comedic beats here that work really well. And there's probably stuff in here that will come back later, because I feel like that's what's happening now. You know, all these episodes are going to set up tiny things that come back later, you know, so that's another thing. Anyways, yeah, let me know what you guys think. How do you feel about this episode? How do you feel about, you know, in quotes, filler episodes? How do you feel about, like, you know, what were your expectations about Ilum and Boba Fett and Sabine and all your theories? Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.